because it's quite a different thing. We're not going to give a second chance to someone who commits murder or sexual assault or carjacking or armed robbery. We're just not going to do that. And so it's for lower level felonies because that's where people usually begin criminal activity, although some go right to murder, unfortunately. And so we just want to make sure that we're trying to address the issues that the defendant has to make sure that they don't recidivate. And so mental health court, the supervision tends to be a little bit longer, as you can imagine. We want to make sure that that person takes their meds, stays on their meds, gets treatment, gets therapy. And so we work hand in hand with some of these courts. So I just want to make clear that we are really attempting to, again, being a prosecutor now is just not locking everybody out. It's certainly treating your violent crime in a different way than the usual, the way that you hear. But when it comes to some of our lower level crimes and misdemeanors, we're really looking at ways to try to stem the tide. And the way we stem the tide is to addressing some of the issues that people have before they begin committing crimes. So many people may have a son or a daughter that's in trouble, on drugs, and headed toward a life of crime. And we want to really stop that before it occurs. So there's a big mix of what's going on now in modern prosecution. And I've been saying this since 2004. And I was ostracized by saying this in 2004, that we shouldn't just lock everybody up all the time, that we really need to get to the bottom line, or we're never going to get a handle on our crime problem here in Wayne County. So I just want to make that clear as well. So we have other diversion courts and we do other crimes too, but this is just a small snippet of some of the work that we do. We do a lot more, we take a lot more time to talk about everything we do. So this is kind of just a small snippet. And we have many other diversion programs as well. Truancy, to deal truancy to get children to stay in school, because if we can get kids to stay in school, generally they won't get involved in life crime. So we have that as well. I want to talk a minute, and before I talk about body-worn cameras, I want to just have Joe Jansen talk about some of the work that he does in the conviction. And he's the chief in charge of special operations, and one of those units that he supervises is called the Public Integrity Unit. And I also want you just to say a few words about the deed fraud unit as well.
Okay, I can start with deed fraud because that's a little quicker. So the deed fraud unit is something that is a task force actually with the Wayne County Sheriff, the Register of Deeds, and of course Kenworthy Office, Wayne County.
We were also the first of the nation to have one of these as well.
Right. And the Register of Deeds discovered a problem with mortgage fraud and deed fraud happening in his department, approached Kim on it, and they were able to put together a task force. So the investigators sit with us, the Register of Deeds people sit with us, and the prosecutors sit with us, in all in one area. So they take the complaint and they vertically prosecute it all the way through. So it's screened as to whether it's maybe civil, because there's a lot of civil actions that take place that people think may be criminal when they lose their property. Screened to see whether it's even criminal and worth investigating. Once it's decided that, then it's investigated, and that investigator works closely with the prosecutor. That prosecutor then takes over that case once it's charged and prosecutes it all the way through into sentencing if they get that far. So
we're talking about cases where people literally find out that they no longer own their own home because the deed has been fraudulently handed over to somebody else. And the case, I just want to take a minute, the case that started this all back in, I think it was 2005. Was it 2005, Don? It was like 2005. The Register of Deeds called because he had someone that came into his office to quit claim a house to him. And it turns out that the house that he was trying to steal belonged to a worker that was standing behind the counter of the Register of Deeds office.
Oh, God.
So he called us, we told him to tap dance, do whatever he, say the system was down, do whatever we can so we can get in touch with the sheriffs. So the sheriffs can come and stop this transaction when they were literally trying to steal the house off from one of his staff members.
Wow.
And so we tried everything we can, they tried everything we can to stall. And finally the person got wise that something was going on, and he tried to leave, and as he was trying to leave, the deputy sheriff came from the elevator and arrested him. So after that, the three of us, the sheriff, Ben Napoleon, Bernie Youngblood, who's the Register of Deeds, and I sat down and formed this unit, because at that time, you remember, the housing boom and the had fallen, and people were losing their homes, and just all these kinds of things were happening. So we really wanted to get a handle on this, and try to help people who were losing their homes through fraud.
yeah, as well as mortgage fraud and short sale fraud, which was happening a lot during 2009, 2008, 2010. Now it's mostly deed fraud, which is people taking houses, forging deeds and just taking houses. Mostly it's if the landlord's absent or the house is vacant, or the person died and the house is, then the family is not taking care of it. So there's a lot of opportunity to take that fraudulently rent it or try and take the house altogether and get a mortgage put on it.
So these are very intensive cases. We had one case many years ago, we had 27 boxes full of materials that my prosecutors had to go through to try to put that case together. A lot of these cases, some of these cases do go to trial, but they're so paper intensive and there's such a paper trail, many times they will plead guilty and fall on their sword, so to speak. We had a case many years ago where a pastor of a church actually stole houses from 7 of his members. And so he's now in prison. No longer preaching, or maybe he's still preaching, but he's not preaching.
And we had the opposite. We had a guy steal the church, so he could strip it.
Yes, we did.
The fraudulent deed. Now he's in prison.
Tried to steal the church, can you imagine?
Yep, I can.
This is what we see, we can't make this stuff up. Anything that happens in our office, most of the stuff that Hollywood writers can't even think of. We see so much stuff. Okay, go ahead, Joe.
So then public integrity, so we prosecute, we investigate as well. Any misconduct, police misconduct throughout the county, public officials misconduct throughout the county, some school officials, if they're principals or higher up in schools, we also investigate those cases as well. So any type of unlawful use of force by the police department, if they're making an arrest, anybody who's also on the opposite side, who's shooting at the police, we take those type of cases. Anybody who's shot or killed the police, we take those cases and prosecute those through as well. We also take the cases where the officers are just off-duty, drunk driving cases. Since they're police officers, we hold them to the same standard we hold everybody else to. We just want to make sure that's done all the way through the system. So even if it's anywhere from a drunk driving all the way up to a fatal shooting an officer did, we handle those cases.
Except for a police officer, domestic violence, that's done by the domestic violence unit. I want to skip ahead a bit because I want to leave some time for questions. I want to skip ahead a bit and talk about safe storage. This is something that I'm very passionate about. It's something I've been trying to get going across the state. And a few years ago, we had 27, 28, I can't remember which one it was, but a lot of children that were killed, and their deaths were completely preventable across the county. And this would happen when a child would either go to a home or be living at a home where the lawful gun owner did not safely store their weapon. I'm not talking about the gun owner who locks their weapon up and the child happens to find it. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about the lawful gun owner who does everything they can to make sure that their children don't get their hands on their gun. I'm talking about the lawful gun owner who leaves their gun loaded on top of the TV where the kids play with the Game Boy. I'm talking about the lawful gun owner who keeps their gun loaded on a bed or under a bed in a room that they know children play in. I'm talking about cases where a lawful gun owner leaves a weapon on top of the coffee table in the living room and children are running around. That's what I'm talking about. Children, for some reason, have a fascination with guns. And I don't know how many of you saw a series that was done many years ago on Dateline, where they brought in these parents who had lectured their children about the dangerousness of guns. And they knew their children would not pick up a loaded gun because they had been counseled and taught not to do so. So they brought in all these children, I don't remember how many it was, they had the parents sitting behind a screen. Of course the gun was not loaded. And they just wanted to show these parents, these kids, no matter how much they've been counseled and talked to, at each and every one of those children, to the horror of their parents, picked up that gun and pointed it and tried to shoot it. Now some of you are not in your heads, you saw this, there was a series done on Dateline many years ago. So children have a fascination with guns, and it's up to the adults in the room that are gun owners to make sure that these guns are locked up and protected. So I was very unpopular when we started this because we were the first office in the state to charge a parent who loved his granddaughter, but he left his gun on the coffee table in the living room where she was running around, or where she was. And that child picked up the gun and shot another child. I can't remember if that child died or not. We had one case where a man had a loaded shotgun on top of a TV in the same room where his children were playing with the Game Boy. The children picked up the gun, were mimicking the violent video game, don't get me started on those. Were mimicking the violent video game, and she shot, I don't know, the sister shot the brother shot the sister, I don't remember, Jerry. But it doesn't, sister shot the brother. One of them was 9, one of them was 10, I think, and that child was dead. Now, even if you don't have guns in your home, you may send your child or your grandchild to somebody else's house and your grandchild never comes home, or your child never comes home. Because whoever house you sent them to didn't safely store their gun. So we're talking about people who are incredibly neglectful about storing their guns. And so many states across this country have what's called safe storage laws and penalties attached. So we are trying, it's a tough sell. When I started talking about this 3 years ago, just among my colleagues, among the other 82 prosecutors that lead offices across the state, I was shot down by my colleagues up north. They said, Kim, it is not unusual where I live, in the UP or wherever, and to my 16-year-old bring a loaded shotgun, lean it against the wall in the home, and we just leave it there. So after many, many months of talking, we compromised, and we said anyone under the age of 13. There's all kinds of, the legislation that we propose, there's all kinds of exceptions. If you're gonna stolen and something happens, then we're not talking about you. We're not talking about if you've gifted your child and your child is a trained hunter, we're not talking about you. We're just talking about the sole neglect of people who leave their loaded firearms in dangerous places where children can get to and kill themselves.